doing JavaScript algos and data structures on FreeCodeCamp. We are in the ES6 course, and we are on challenge 16 of 29. So today, actually we're on 15 of 29. We are going to create strings using template literals. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do here is create strings a new way that is honestly much simpler than, creating strings and adding strings together. Using the addition operator, the plus sign, with strings is kind of a weird concept because that's math. Letters are not part of that, or at least strings aren't. So we're going to learn a new way today, and it makes it very easy to plug in expressions into a string exactly where you want them to be. So I would read all this. As always, guys, read this when you're going through it, try and solve it, and then come to the video if you can't. But essentially what we have here is an object, and then we have a constant that's assigned to a string. Okay, it says, hello, my name is $ curly brace person.name. I am $ curly brace person.age years old. If we actually run this, it would say, hello, my name is Zodiac Hasbro. I am 56 years old. Because pretty clearly you can see person.name is a variable. You go into person, you have a .name property, so it'll plug it in right here. And then same with person.age, right? Person has an age property, you plug it in right here, you get that output. That's basically it. The main difference with what are known as template literals, this is known as string interpolation, but this is called a template literal. The main difference is we use backticks. So if you look at your keyboard, to the left of the 1, under the escape key, that little squiggly symbol, that's the backtick. Well, the squiggly symbol is the tilde, but underneath it, that's the backtick. So if you press that key on your keyboard, you'll get these two backticks, and you can note, look here, they look quite different from a single quote or a double quote. They're tilted to the side. So that's backticks. You have to use backticks when you're using a template literal. That's what signifies to JavaScript that this is a template literal, not a normal string. Okay? The only other thing I would note about template literals is that you can plug in expressions into your code, right? So this is a variable name that naturally has a value, but we could return an expression as well. So we could say, my name is person.name plus person.age, and then it would say, my name is Zodiac Hasbro 56 in one string, right? Essentially, you can do an expression in that $ curly brace, because this is telling JavaScript that this is code. This is logic within these braces. It's not just a string anymore. It's some type of logic, whether it's a variable name or whether it's an expression like a plus b. It will compute it, and it will plug in whatever that value actually is, okay? Whatever it computes down to. That's really all there is to template literals. You just use backticks, $ curly brace, and plug in whatever variable or whatever expression, and when it actually runs, when it actually displays, you'll have the correct string, assuming you plugged in the right data. So now that's what we have to do for this challenge. Let's look at this and see what we actually got going on. So we have a result object, okay, contains 3 different properties, and their values are different arrays. Cool. We have a function called makeList. It takes in some type of array, and then it returns some type of array called failure items. And then we have an actual function call down here. We have const failure list equals makeList with some data being passed. So this is the actual function call. We're storing whatever this function returns to us, in this case failure items, in this variable, right? So whenever we assign a function like this to a variable, a function call to a variable, you're storing whatever that function returned to you. So our goal is to make this function take in this data, this result.failure. So result.failure, we're going to take in this array of data, and we're going to plug in these 3 values into this string, this HTML element string. It's technically a string, but it's in the syntax of an HTML element. And as you can see, we're just going to plug in the variable here. And then we're going to push this string into a new array and return this array. So that looks like that's that failure items array. We're going to push these items into that and then return it. Okay. If we look at the actual instructions, which you should probably do, it basically tells you to do all that. It says in iterator method, any kind of loop, or use an iterator method, any kind of loop, to get to the desired output. So we know we have to do the same operation for every one of these items in the array. So naturally, we know we're going to have to iterate in some way. We're going to have to use some kind of loop or some kind of method. So that's a hint, but that's off the bat. We should know that because we're working with an array. Okay. And not only are we working with an array, we're working with every item within an array. All right, so let's start with on this line where it says const failure items equals an empty array. Okay, cool. So I know my array here, this ARR variable array, is the data I want. It is result.failure. Result.failure is this array of data. Okay, so now I've verified I know what my data is that I'm taking in. How can I plug in these variables into a string? Well, we just learned about template literals, so that's a good place to start. Let's start there. So let's first store one of these in a variable, but oh no, I know I have to do it for every one of these, so let's start a loop so we can actually get going and grab an item within the array. So let's do a for loop. For let I equals 0, I is arbitrary, I is less than the array, so the input dot length, because I want to go over the entire array, and then I'm going to I plus plus. And this will touch every item in the array. So if I console.log array at I, you can see I get each item one at a time, because as this loop runs, I increments and we grab one item after another. So whatever's in this code block is what gets re-executed. So I know array of I now gives me one item at a time. So what I can do is just say, okay, well, clearly array of I is one item at a time. If I look down here, yep, that's what I want. So I'm just going to say, let's create a new string. So we don't even have to create a variable, but for simplicity's sake, let's say let string equal, and string is a keyword, so you'll note that I used str abbreviation. So we can't use string as a keyword string, we have to abbreviate. Same thing with array as ARR. And then we're going to create a template literal. So let's do that. Backticks. Again, you can note the backticks from single quotes or double quotes because they're flipped on their side a little bit. And now all we have to do is plug in this syntax. So let's actually just copy this element because this is what it wants and plug it in here. And then the only thing we need to change is the actual inner HTML within this element. So as we know with template literals, the syntax to plug in anything, whether it's an expression or a variable, is just $ curly braces. So $ object. So $ object curly brace, closing brace. Cool. Now whatever I put in this will just plug in like it's nothing, okay? So we know array of I is the data I want to plug in. So let's try that. Array of I. And now let's just console log that to see what's actually going on. The string. And you can see, okay, cool. This does look like what I want for my output. And that's stored in string. Awesome. So now I can just say, let's take our failure items array, our output data, and say, okay, failure items dot push. So it's an array. We know push will add the item to the end of the array. It'll just push it to the end. We'll just add it to it. And we're just going to push the string. We're going to push this new string that we created, which is within the for loop. So this will become each of these strings at one point in time, and each of them will get pushed into this failure array. And then once we exit the loop here, we can then just return the failure items array, because at that point it will have been populated with all of the necessary data. So let's see if that works. Run this, and it does in fact work. And we can see why, right? It makes sense because within the loop, we grab one item at a time, and then we plug in that item into the string, and then push that string into the failure items array, which is outside the loop, and then return that final item, that final array, once we're outside the loop again. So I hope that helped. Hope that made sense, guys. Definitely read all this because this is helpful if this was confusing to you, but template literals are very much as simple as they seem. $ curly brace, it's a variable, it's logic, it's some kind of JavaScript, it's no longer part of the string, but it will plug it in to whatever that value actually is, right? It's as simple as that. Just got to remember, use the backticks, not the quotes, all right? Hope that helped, and I'll see you guys in the next one.